Fantasy managers, welcome back to another installment of the FPL Addicts Game Week review. It's Rev here, and today I am privileged to be joined by our guest host, IBK, none other than Mr. Twitter Space himself from the FPL Sandwich podcast. And we're bringing you all the latest from Fantasy Premier League this week. We're going to go through some of the highlights of the teams and some of the assets from this week in Game Week 9 to help you with your Game Week 9 dilemmas. If you're new around here, make sure that you give our podcast or video some love with a like or rating or a review on the podcast, as well as hitting that subscribe button as well. A big thank you to those in the chat who have already joined us. It's a pleasure to have you all with us today. But first of all, let's hear from Mr. FPL Sandwich himself. It's IBK. Mate, pleasure to be joined by you today. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. How
Yeah,
are you?
very good. Yeah, feeling very good. I feel like I got away with it this week. I feel like I got away with murder because I didn't captain Erling Haaland this week, but I did have James Maddison in my team, so it kind of rescued me from the fire this week. How did your game week go?
Well, it started off really sad because, like yourself, I started off captaining Madison, and then it went to Salah, and then stayed on Salah. So it could have been worse. It could have been worse. So
Yeah,
I captained Salah because the narrative was that if you had Salah in your team and you did not captain him, you're wasting the money that you're wasting the value that Salah has. So
mm.
in hindsight, I shouldn't have captained Salah, but that's gone now. But I got 70 points. Cancelo didn't have the clean sheets. Trippier
Mm.
did well. James blanked. Martinelli got an assist. Madison 18 points, did really well. We'll talk about
Yeah, of
Madison in a few
course.
minutes. Salah 10 points. Zaha 2 points. Mitrovic with an injury, so I'm just gonna wait until Friday.
Yeah, get
Ivan
some team
Toney,
news.
yeah, Ivan Toney 1 pointer, and Haaland with the 23 points. And then on my bench, I've got Andres Pereira, Nico Williams with a -1, and Guehi with 1 point. So
Yeah.
Pickford with 2 points as well. So it could have been worse, 70 points, and my rank is 1.5 million now. So
You've been
it's still
climbing.
to go.
Been climbing, yeah. I think it's been a hard start for people like myself and you over these past 9 game weeks to the Mo Salah faithful, as it were. You know, we've been kind of maybe had our heads in the past a little bit too much and been thinking about that run, especially through the first half of last year, and we've been hoping against hope really that he can repeat it, but it's just not been happening. But that kind of brings us on to the new FPL King, as it were. So the first game that we're going to look at, the first game that we're going to review today, mate, as FPL Penguin joins us in the chat. Hello, FPL Penguin, welcome. And the first game that we are going to look at is Man City versus Man United. And the first point that I want to have a look at is Erling Haaland. Is he the perma captain now? What do you think?
Yeah, I think he is. And we've been talking about one premium. If you're going to captain Haaland, then you can spread the funds from Salah
Mm-hmm.
to the rest of your team. So that allows you to have the likes of Zaha, Madison, Bowen, Trossard, and then you can spread the funds in your defense as well.
Mm.
So having Haaland as your perma captain just makes life easier for you because you can just stick the captaincy on him. If you're not captaining Salah or KDB or Kane, then you can have the likes. You can upgrade Andres Pereira to someone like Foden. After game
Yeah,
week 12, City's fixtures look really good. You can do Madison to Luis Diaz as well. So you can have a very strong midfield
yeah,
and you can have a 3-5-2 formation with 5 midfielders and downgrading that last forward spot. So yeah,
yeah.
Haaland is just making FPL boring, isn't it?
He's just ridiculous. He is just ridiculous. And the thing, one of the reasons why I went against Captain and Haaland this week is because it seemed like Man United were on a real upwards trajectory. You know, they were looking a lot more solid, and they were looking maybe a lot more stable at the back. Varane and Martinez were looking like, if any defense was going to be able to handle Man City, it was looking like it could have been Man United, and yet they've only gone and bowled them for 6. It's just one of those which is like completely ridiculous. And I do totally hear what you're saying about, can we just go with one premium asset right now? I mean, I started this season on a quotation marks on the old Wanium, but it was the wrong premium that I started with. I started with what's it called? I started with Salah as my only premium, thinking, well, Haaland might get a goal a game, but so could Salah. But Salah's a midfielder, so he gets more points. So it's obviously disappointing. The next standout performance from that game, though, it has to be attacking midfielder Phil Foden. What did you make of his performance, IBK?
I think he's a very good player, and he's played a lot of minutes from the start of the season. So that tells you that he's nailed.
Yeah.
Last season, it was a case between Foden and Mahrez. There was much more of an uncertainty whether Foden's minutes were nailed last season, but he's got that left wing spot. I think he plays. So does he play left or right wing? I think he plays. He can play either, but his minutes are nailed right now, and he came off in the 75th minute. So that tells you that he will play in the Champions League and get a rest, and then play against Southampton. So I think he's one to watch. If that blank was not there, I would have gone from Salah straight to Foden, but because of that blank in there, it's a bit too late to get him now. But after the blank, he's back in my team, so he looked really good. And I remember in game week 2 when I triple captained Haaland and he didn't pass the ball to Haaland. I'm still raging about that, but
Yeah, there's a bit of animosity there. I think so often we can just be angry at players and just not want to bring them in just because we don't like them. I remember like a few seasons ago, because I'm an Everton fan, I just like, back when I was a filthy casual, I just refused to buy Liverpool players. I just refused to. And and over the past few seasons, that was obviously really punishing, and I had to like remove my bias from the game. But one of the things I need to do is actually listen to my own advice. So one of the things that I do with the FPL Addicts podcast is every Tuesday I release a hot tip of the week. And so a few weeks ago, I said to people to maybe start thinking about either going to a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2 formation, because that's where the meta looks like it's supposed to be shifting towards. Last week, I told people to avoid Dominic Solanke, and he's obviously blanked again. Because that was a bit of a Twitter bandwagon, to be fair, and I just wasn't having it. And then 2 weeks ago, my hot tip, my hot tip of the week was to bring in Phil Foden, and he's only gone and got 4 in 2 games, and I just need to follow my own advice. I think one of the things I need to do is just like trust my gut a lot more, and just like not be afraid to take hits and just be a bit more aggressive. I think one of my strengths from last year was I was a bit more of an aggressive player. I wasn't really so afraid to take hits, and this season I've been maybe living in that past of, oh, I took too many hits last year. I need to be, and now I'm just being overly cautious, and it's really not served me so well this season. But my last point about the Man United and Man City game is that Man United did win, and I know win is in quotation marks, but they won the second half 3-2. Is there a side there in Man United? Do you reckon we can trust them going forward?
I was just looking at the fixtures, and in
Yeah,
game week, I think game week 14,
yeah.
they've got a okay range of fixtures. And if you look at their home fixtures, they've got who do they have? They've got Newcastle in 11. They've got Spurs in 12.
Hmm.
West Ham in 14. So Anthony is a person that I'm really looking at. Anthony and Martial. So
Mm.
Martial is 6.5 million, I think. So he could be an option, but I want to see more minutes from him. And
Yeah,
as we've
because
seen
he came off the bench, didn't he? And almost did his best Heung-min Son impression, and got those 2 goals, and he took them well, didn't he?
yeah, he did, and he scored against Liverpool. He's now scoring against City, so he's a big game player. And at home to Newcastle and Spurs, I can just see him delivering again. So that option is there to switch to United, but their fixtures are quite mixed. They've got
Mm.
tricky away fixtures to Chelsea, Villa, and Fulham. So it's tricky. It's tricky with United assets. You don't know what to expect from them. And away to
Mm.
Everton, it's going to be a midfield battle. And Goodison Park is not a good place to go to away from home, as we've
It
seen.
really isn't, and it feels so good to say that. Come on. Yeah, and to be fair, before we maybe touch on Everton a little bit later, currently Everton are the best defense in the league, having conceded only 7 goals total all season. Currently conceded less goals than Man City, and if you look back, our fixtures haven't exactly been kind fixtures either. So quite happy about that, and obviously I've got my eyes on players like Connor Cody and Tarkowski going forward. Maybe not Patterson because of his injury, but Mikalenko looks like a solid option as well. Maybe even Jordan Pickford could be someone that I know that you've already got in your team, but yeah, looking forward to seeing a potential for me to actually have some Everton assets in my team for a change. Who do you support, IBK?
It's what Chelsea.
For Chelsea. Um, and I think that there's a couple of Chelsea assets that I do want to talk to you a little bit later about, but we'll move on to the next couple of games that we're going to be highlighting in today's review podcast. The first game that I want us to talk about is Leicester versus Forest. First things first, the Maddison Masterclass. Give us your thoughts on that, mate.
From a night test perspective, he was fantastic. He was
Woo.
everywhere. He was taking the set
Mm-hmm.
pieces. Everything that Leicester did was going through Madison. And I was watching the Monday Night Football yesterday, and he was saying that he's going to try and force his way into the England team. And when you hear these things in FPL terms, you just
Mm-hmm.
have to keep him in your team because he's playing for a place on that plane. So I
Mm,
just feel like, you just stick him in your team and you just leave him in there.
yeah,
Forest were it's worth saying as well. Forest were quite bad, and Awani missed a sitter. And if he had scored, would
yeah.
that have changed the course of the game? I'm not sure. But
Mm,
what we can say is Madison is doing really well. 2 goals, 1 assist. His heat map is looking good.
yeah,
76 touches, 4 key passes, 2 big chances missed. So he could have actually got more than what he got yesterday.
yeah,
So he is a very good asset, and he's still a differential, I believe. So
yeah. It's
he's
crazy.
someone. I think he's borderline essential right now.
Yeah, and I think as much as FPL managers, as much as we don't like using the old E word, essential. It's one of those where for the money that you can bring him in for, he's relatively cheap in terms of the amount of chances that he created. Like that game yesterday, the free kick and also was really well taken goal aside, like he could have had maybe 9 assists, something like that. The amount of chances that he was creating, I know KDH um was giving it on an absolute plate in the first half, and when he missed that header, I had my head in my hands because I was like, oh, is this going to be another game where we're holding on to Leicester assets and they're just so close, but no cigar. But the fact that he was able to come up with an amazing haul for us was just amazing. Another asset as well that really impressed is Harvey Barnes as well. I've definitely got my eye on him. What do you think about him? Do you think that Leicester are worth the double up in attack?
Mm, no, I don't think they
No.
are, because you have to just look at your position. And
Yeah.
for me, Bournemouth at home is a tough fixture. And when you look at their record ever since they've sacked uh, Parker, it's they've had good defensive numbers. And if Barnes was to get another attacking return in this fixture, then go for it. But it's a bit knee-jerky to double up on Leicester's attack because Forest were very woeful yesterday, very woeful. But Barnes did do well. He's playing on that left wing and he's nailed. So 3 key passes again, 2 shots on target. So he's looking good. He's on form, but I'll just give it time for now.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a key point there, mate, as well, which is like we've got to remember that we shouldn't just be all flocking to Leicester players right now. Maybe erring on the side of caution is the way to go because we just have to remember they did play Forest, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to Forest at all, but they were really poor, and there's absolutely no surprise there in the fact that Leicester were able to absolutely turn them over, and so. But the thing is, as well, for Leicester, from their perspective, sometimes all you need is a good result like that to remember who you are, and then to just keep going and have that little bit of confidence going into the next game. I think they've got the fixtures to do it, and maybe Brendan Rodgers can just about keep his job. Yeah, it's going to be one of them. I'm not sure if he'll be there at the end of the season, but hopefully Leicester will turn it around for the sake of our FPL teams. The last player, mate, and I know that you've been giving me a bunch of stick for this on Twitter Spaces, mate. Danny Ward, finally, I have had Danny Ward since game week 1, guys, and let me tell you, I've suffered. I've been in pain for about 8 game weeks. And finally, not only does he get a clean sheet, mate, he comes in with the bonus point. Just, absolutely delicious. I'm looking forward to a few clean sheets over the next game week, because they've got the fixtures to do it. Lord Ward, does that have a ring to it? IBK, Lord Ward.
All I can say is enjoy these points because that's the only point you'll get for a while. So.
No, I mean, obviously because I've got him, I feel like I'm stuck with him, and I'm not going to sell him before the fixtures that he had, and that clean sheet against Forest, maybe that's all he needed was a bit of that confidence, and I really hope I can see some more clean sheets from them. I know people who have wildcarded into this week. They wildcarded into Ward and Iverson just because of Leicester's fixtures, which just seems crazy. Like, if I still had my wild card, I'd definitely be going out of them. So the fact that I was like inadvertently rewarded just by keeping Danny Ward this week, it was one of them that I'm really glad to finally get the points from. I mean, sometimes in FPL the key is patience, but I think I've shown a little bit too much patience with Danny Ward, and I've come full circle. So I'll take it. Another game that I want to kind of highlight before we move on to like particular individual assets. The last game I want to highlight is the Fulham versus Newcastle game, because when I saw the injury list for this game, when I was looking at players like, Isaac is out for Newcastle, ASM also out for Newcastle, and also Mitrovic, who hobbled off his game for Serbia. I was expecting a 0-0, maybe even a 1-0, because both Fulham and Newcastle have been really, really good, and credit to them. And for that game to finish 4-1 really, really surprised me. What did you make of the game?
I think the red card really had a big impact on how the game panned out, to be honest with you. And Fulham, so far this season, have been good at home, relatively good at home. So it's they've got quite a few injuries now, haven't they? And it just makes them slightly weak moving forward. With Paulinho being away, he's been immense for them this season. and I'm just waiting to see if he's back for that fixture against West Ham. You've got Kushawa, you've got Mitrovic, you've got Chalobah with a red card. So it's tough times for Fulham right now, and I would say they are the team to target. So with
Yeah.
Mitrovic and Isak and Tony and these options starting to go out of favour, I think a 3-5-2 might be where the template is maybe shifting towards, because Wilson is back, and Wilson looked good on
Mm-hmm.
Saturday. He hit the woodwork, so he could have got more. And I think he had one of the highest XGs for
Yeah.
players this game week.
Yeah.
So with Fulham, it's tough. It's tough to go with Mitchell, and he got a yellow card as well, which was awesome. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just going to wait on Mitrovic to see the extent of his injury and
Yeah.
assess that going forward.
Yeah. And I think without Isak and ASM, I think one of like the go-to Newcastle attacker was Callum Wilson. But as me and you have joked about on Twitter Spaces, man's got Weetabix legs. You know, it. Do you reckon he's going to be able to keep it going? What do we do with Callum Wilson? Because he's so dangerous when he is playing. But is he consistent enough to warrant us bringing him in?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I did have him in game week 1, and soon after his injury caught up to him. And once Callum Wilson is injured, they don't rush him back in. It takes a good few game weeks for them to make him recovered and ready to go back again. So I'm just going to be watching Callum Wilson from a distance now, and seeing how he gets along, because he's a great striker. He does take penalties, even though Isaac is back. He will still
Mm-hmm.
be on penalties,
Yeah.
and his ownership right now is 1.1%. So even if he scores or does anything worth talking about, it won't really affect rank too much. So I'll
Yeah.
still be watching Wilson from a distance and see
Yeah.
see how he does.
Yeah. I think one of the Newcastle players that I would like to maybe suggest, and I'm not sure if you would agree with this as a shout or not, but given the extent of Newcastle's injuries, but we know that they're a good side, and maybe if we want a way of just getting a little slice of that action, a slice of those attacking returns, could Joe Willock be a way into that Newcastle side?
No,
Because we know that a couple of seasons ago he was on absolute red hot form, and in this last game he was showing shades of his former self with 2 assists. But you don't look impressed, mate. You don't look impressed.
no,
No, no further thoughts. No further thoughts.
nah, no.
No. All right. That's okay. Well, I'll remember this next week. I'm going to clip this bit, and then when Joe Willock scores, mate, I'm just going to send it to you, and we can all laugh at you. Okay, that's fine. All right, awesome. Well, there are a few assets as well that did impress overall. Obviously, we're not going to talk about every single player, and to be honest, I'm not even going to mention Almiron because the man's a meme. Like, obviously, he did really well, and he scored a volley that even Zidane would have been proud of. But he's not going to do that every week, is he? It was such a low XG chance, and he nailed it. To be fair to him, but we know he's not consistent enough to warrant a conversation about him. But I want to move on to some assets. So I want to talk about a couple of defenders, then a couple of midfielders, and then I want to talk about a couple of strikers, if that's all right with you, mate.
Yep.
So asset number 1, Connor Cody. Obviously, I've got a bit of bias here, but you got the bonus point. You also got a goal. Everton currently are the lowest in the league for goals conceded, making us, the best defense in the league for goals conceded. Could you potentially be looking about getting another way into that Everton defense?
I just think double Everton defense is a bit much, isn't it? I mean, Pickford is a good option because he can get the saves and he's a good price, 4.5 million. But I'm really impressed with what Lampard, his approach has been with that Everton defence, going for two captains.
Yeah,
Cody was a captain from Wolves. Kakowski was a captain from Burnley, and to have that in the dressing room is so it makes a big difference.
it's massive.
And when you consider the injuries to Mina and Godfrey, and replacing these two defenders with Cody and Tarkowski, it makes a big difference. And I've watched them at home since the day they played Chelsea. I said to myself, this defense is going to achieve big things. And look, they've
Yeah,
conceded the least goals so far, and that United game will be a very tough game. But I think my prediction for that game is going to be 1-0, and purely because that midfield battle, they're going to win it. I think if
yeah,
Ten Hag plays Ericsson and McTominay, they aren't going to win that game. So
yeah.
the midfield of Onana, Iwobi,
Idrissa Gana Gay as well.
Gay as well. There you go. They've won that midfield battle. So I do like that Everton defense, but double Everton defense is
Yeah, because you're already on Pickford, of course, but I think I'm definitely looking like at some point in the future of having maybe like Mikalenko and Tarkowski, like, and just having them there on the bench because they're cheap enough to keep there, but also good enough to bring in whenever. And so, I'm really looking forward to see how Everton progress under Frank Lampard. Obviously, as a Blue, I could go on about them for all day, but I will move on to another player who, as an Everton fan, I really liked watching this week, and that's Trossard, because he put Liverpool to the sword. Absolutely put them to the sword. Did you catch that game, IBK?
it did.
Yeah, and it was brutal. What's happened to Liverpool? What's happened to them?
Couldn't tell you. There's so many. We could talk about this for a few hours, but
Yeah,
there's so many different branches you can go. There is Trent. There is the individual mistakes from players like Fabinho, Van Dijk. There's Salah. He's not been the same since AFCON.
no,
You
yeah,
can go signing Nunez. You can go. Why did he play Carvalho at left wing?
yeah. What was that about?
Bizarre
That was
decisions.
strange, wasn't it?
These
When you've
tactics.
got players like Diaz and also Jota and Firmino, like the fact that Carvalho was in there at left wing. What was going on with that?
It's very bizarre, and I've heard a few things about Pep Linders not being as good tactically, and it's worrying times for Liverpool. And when you've got Arsenal, they're facing Arsenal, aren't they, this weekend? And Arsenal will
Yeah.
rest their key players against. I forgot the team they're playing, and I think it's not. Is it Anderlecht? No, they're playing Europa League, so
Hmm.
they're gonna have players like Jesus, Partey,
Yeah,
Xhaka,
yeah,
and then you've got Martinelli playing against Trent, and then you've got Saka playing against Simicas. So it's going to be a very big game. And but the thing is, Liverpool do post very high XG stats. If you were to tot up the XG
yeah,
this
yeah,
season, Liverpool and Arsenal are taught to top. But then pinpointing who gets that XG from Liverpool, that's the key. And
yeah.
every time that Klopp has played Nunez up top, he hasn't won a game. So it's just going to be a case of, does he play Firmino? Does he play Jota? What front three is he going to play? And that front three is not settled yet. I don't think Klopp knows his best front three yet.
He doesn't. Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Liverpool in the next coming
Mm,
weeks, because their next two fixtures are very, very key to their top four hopes.
yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
what's your
I think if you are Bobby Firmino, you've got to be really frustrated because obviously against Bournemouth, you got the hat trick. Was it Bournemouth?
yes?
Yeah, yeah, Bournemouth, and then was immediately dropped. At the game after that when Nunes was unsuspended. What's the word there? When he came back from suspension.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so that was frustrating. And then he wins his way back into the team, and then he gets another two goals. Um, and obviously Firmino's a rotation risk, so he doesn't really look that good for our FPL sides. But I think just tactically as well, like because I'm still holding on to Trent Alexander-Arnold, so it's relevant to our FPL teams. Is that they totally changed what they were doing with their wing backs. And I think we've seen this from a lot of teams. And I think Liverpool, instead of like just sticking to what they know and sticking to doing what they do best, they've tried to match Man City in what they're doing
Mm.
at the minute with that whole 2-3-5 formation. And they've turned their wing backs into like inverted wing backs. I think one of the best things about Liverpool was the fact that Trent would be bombing down the wing. What One of Trent's best attributes is his ability to cross, and yet if we're sticking him in the center of the goal, he's not going to be able to use that crossing ability. Likewise, what we're seeing from Mo Salah is him being pushed further out wide to make up for the space where Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't. And one of Salah's best attributes is scoring goals. And so he's been moved further away from the goal and he's having to cross. And Trent has been moved closer to the goal and he's not been able to use his strengths as well. But I think it's just a madness, a total madness. Are you going to be looking to be without Liverpool assets pretty soon, sooner rather than later? No Liverpool assets at all, maybe?
Yeah, and I think this is an opportunity to spread the funds now from Salah and
Yeah.
Trent to having a much better midfielder, because when you have Salah in your midfield, you're going to have the likes of Bailey and Andreas. And
Hmm.
in the past few weeks, Bailey and Andreas haven't been posting good
No.
FPL points. And I feel like when you take away the fun from Salah, it gives you an opportunity to also have a more kind of overall balanced team.
Yeah.
So with Haaland now, captaining Haaland and going with one premium, taking away the fun from Trent and Salah is going to make your team a more well-rounded team, and it will be interesting to see what wildcarders do after 12. So you can
Yeah.
go with Luis Diaz as a Salah replacement because that left wing spot is nailed as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Mm.
it's not looking good for Trent and
And that's one of the things that I want to speak about here is, if we are thinking about getting rid of Trent, like who do we replace him with? So as far as I'm concerned, at the minute, the template seems to be Cancelo, Trippier, and James, and then two cheaper midfielders. Like I've got Saliba and Patterson, who could also be Neco Williams. Who, if you were going to get rid of Trent this week, who would you go for?
so
Because
if you don't have
there's
Cancelo,
not that many options. Yeah,
there's not many options, but you've got if you don't have Cancelo, Trippier, and James, I would say those three are the essential three that everyone should have.
yeah,
And then you've got, like you said, you've got Saliba, you've got Guehi, you've
hmm
got potentially West Ham defenders, you've got Villa defenders. There's a lot of cheap options
mm,
there for you to invest in. And I think with the template being three at the back,
yeah,
you can just get two cheap options, maybe Nico Williams and a Guehi or a Mings, a
yeah,
4.3 option.
yeah,
So, there's options there. So I don't have Trent in my team,
mm,
and he's not worth the price at
yeah,
all.
yeah. Awesome, awesome. Thanks for your insight into that, mate. It's really appreciated, and I'm loving the fact that you're using stats as well throughout today's little pod as well to kind of back up your decisions. It's really cool. It's good to get your insight into that. The next asset that I want to talk about a little bit tentatively, actually, is Jarrod Bowen. Obviously, he got the goal, he got the assist, also got the 3 bonus points as he usually does, or at least usually did at least last season when we saw him at his best. The question is he back?
I
Is
think
he
he
back?
is. I think he is
Right.
back, and when you look at their opponents, Fulham, and their injuries and their suspensions, it's got to be a clean sheet for West Ham, I think. And when you look at the attacking intent from Bowen, with XG per 90, he's doing quite well,
Mm,
and I just feel like there's another double digit in his next 4 fixtures. And some
mm,
managers are looking at that Liverpool fixture in 12, thinking that's a tough fixture. But Liverpool are conceding goals, and
Are they a team to target at this point?
I think they are.
Wow, it's because like it feels like they don't have anything in front of the defense. Like Fabinho used to be so great, and then all of a sudden they look really vulnerable. They look really vulnerable, and so yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. In that Bowen, definitely FPL managers, if you're watching along, then maybe do think about getting Jared Bowen back into your team. I went a bit too early on him. I went in on Jared Bowen about game week 2, but I think with players like this, we we need to wait until they start firing, because also Jared Bowen is known as quite a streaky player as
Mm.
well. So hopefully he'll keep this up and we'll be able to get to get him on the go.
And
Um,
if you look
yeah,
at West Ham's fixtures so far this season, they've had tough fixtures on paper.
yeah,
To Spurs, they've had um, Everton away from home, which is a tough fixture. Um, they've had a few tough fixtures on paper, and they've played City as well. So they're going into fantastic fixtures now. So they're
mm,
playing Fulham, they're playing Southampton away from home, they're playing Liverpool, they're playing Bournemouth at home, and they're playing United, who concede goals. So
yeah,
they are looking really good. So this is a good time to punt on Bowen. It's not much of a good. I don't think Bowen is a good long-term investment, but for
yeah,
the next four, he's up there. He's up there for good
yeah.
fixtures.
Yeah, decent, mate, decent. And then finally, the last asset before we start wrapping things up, that I want to talk about, but also get your thoughts on, particularly for yourself as a Chelsea fan, is watching that Chelsea game. For me, I thought Aubameyang was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I would say he was the man of the match. I don't know about you. What were your thoughts on Aubameyang's performance?
I think he played really well, and I'm really happy that he's got off to a good start in at
Mm,
Chelsea. And I just feel like he is a good one to watch. His price though is quite awkward, and at 9 million, it's
it
that
it's pricey.
it's very pricey, and it's between a Mitrovic and a Kane, so it's like it's awkward to fit him in, but he's someone that I'm going to be monitoring very closely. And
Mm,
in that game, his shots per 90 was in the top three, and for XG he was up there as well. So
yeah.
I do like Aubameyang, but if he's going to score in a game, it's going to be Wolves, because Wolves defensively have not been great.
Oh, they've been shocking.
So
Yeah,
they've been quite bad, and they're still missing their central defender Collins. So
yeah.
I think he will be involved. Him and James will be involved in if they score any goals. So yeah,
Yeah, I think with Aubameyang, one of the things that impressed me was how well he took his moment. Like, taking that on the half volley, on the turn, under pressure from the defender, to be able to put it into the far top corner. We know he's a natural finisher, and so if he does the same thing again next week against Wolves with the run of fixtures that Chelsea have, I think he's got to be on our radar. I think one of the things that Chelsea have lacked over the last couple of seasons is a proper number 9. Obviously, Lukaku didn't cut the mustard, and Havertz was far too streaky at the moment to be fully relied on. But just before we wrap up the pod, we'll have a few questions from people in the chat, and we'll pick your brains if that's okay, IBK, on those. So Sean T, welcome, Sean. Sean asks, what then are we thinking about Solanke this weekend at home to Leicester? I think I've been quite clear about my thoughts on Solanke. Do you feel a bit different?
no, my stance on Solanke has been the same ever since
Yeah.
that Solanke train started. And I'm actually looking back. I'm actually quite lucky to have dodged that Solanke train, because if I was to bring Solanke into my team, it will be to enable someone like Trent. And if I was to bring in Solanke, it would
Mm,
have been terrible, because I would have had Trent in my team. and that would have
Yeah.
been a -4 to undo having Solanke and Trent.
Yeah.
So with Solanke, you have to think to yourself, how many goals do you see Bournemouth scoring this season?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be much, is it? So Solanke
No,
is not
not
an
at all.
option. It's better for you to downgrade your third spot to someone like a Greenwood or Archer.
Yeah.
But Solanke, no.
Yeah, and I think if that answers your question there, Sean, that IBK would rather go without a third striker at all than having Dominic Solanke. I think I put out a stat a couple of weeks ago, which might confirm your thoughts, IBK, in that in terms of XG created. Bournemouth were sat at the bottom of the table. And then at 19th was Villa. And Villa still had twice as much XG than Bournemouth. So if you just wanted any indication as to how far off Bournemouth are in terms of their XG, in terms of their chance creation, then that's the stat that kind of confirms it, is that they're twice as bad as the next worst team, which is it's one of those things. Christos, greetings from Greece. Hello, welcome, our international friends here. He says, I'm thinking to play my wild card. Do you suggest? So, obviously, we're not going to suggest all 11 players, but maybe shall we suggest 2 each, IBK? You suggest 2, and then I'll suggest 2. That'll make up the framework for this wild card. And obviously, Christos, if you make up your wild card this week, do come back and let us know how your wild card went. So go on, IBK, take us away.
So in my wildcard, I'll have Madison.
Yeah.
Madison and Zaha.
Madison and Zaha. Yeah, I think that those are two fantastic options. I think what I would say first and foremost is that if you are on a wild card this week, don't have any more than 3 total Man City and Arsenal players, just because remember they do blank in 12. So you only want a total of 3 of those. You don't want to be booking transfers in at this stage. That said, I definitely would recommend having Phil Foden. I think that he's fantastic. Obviously, an amazing player to have. And if he is as nailed as we think he is, those returns are only going to continue. And then the next player, it seems fairly punty this, but if I was on a wild card, I would go with double Chelsea keepers. Double Chelsea keepers. It might seem a little bit insane, actually, but having double Chelsea keepers is still only 0.1 million more expensive than having Ward and Pope. And so if you don't want to have like 2 Chelsea outfield players, because I know most of us are on Ward and maybe some of us are and ahhing or thinking about Sterling, or maybe in the future thinking about Aubameyang, or maybe adding a Ben Chilwell, depending on what we think Graham Potter is going to do. But I'd personally go for double Chelsea keepers right now. I think that their fixtures are great, and I think those keepers are cheap enough to double up on, and it's still only 0.1 mil more expensive than Ward and Pope. So a bit of a rogue shout there. Gary, Banjo Sandwich, or maybe perhaps one of your mates from the FPL Sandwich podcast. Who should be a defo, like a definite for a mid and striker this week if I want to swap out Mitrovic and Declan Rice? Interesting. Who are the players? If you had those two, who would we be swapping those to?
Swap who? MIT. Who's MIT?
Mitrovic. I'm assuming it's Mitrovic.
Or Mitrovic out and
Yeah.
Rice.
Yeah, interesting.
So
How much is Rice? Is he 4.9, 5?
I think he's 4.9. Rice is 4.9, yes. 4.9. Yeah, he's 4.9.
Interesting.
So 4.9. I would say downgrade Mitrovic. It depends what his team is.
Yeah.
So if you've got Jesus and Haaland already, or Tony and Haaland, I would just say downgrade Mitrovic to a 4.5 option, so Greenwood. And
Yeah,
then if you can get to someone like Trossard or Bowen or Madison, if you don't have those three, that's what
yeah.
my suggestion would be.
Yeah, and if your budget is quite tight, obviously I'm biased, but I think Anthony Gordon's looked amazing so far for Everton this season, and at 5.6, is he 5.6? Yeah, I think
Yeah.
he's 5.6 at the moment. For 5.6, you could do a lot worse. So if you're going to take out Mitrovic and Rice, we'd definitely say go to someone like Archer for 4.3 and then upgrade um, Rice to Gordon, or if you can stretch to someone like a Zaha or a Bowen, then even better. Next question is Emre Kappa. He said, "Greetings from Turkey. Hello, my friend." His question is, "What do you think about Eze, Guay, and James Justin?" I assume that's Justin from Leicester. Yeah. I think they're all great cheap options. They're good enablers, so to speak. And I think one of the things as to why we're discussing players from Palace and also players from Leicester is that their fixtures are just really good, aren't they, IBK?
Yeah, they are good. With Eze, it's too much of a differential, and when you've got Zaha who's taking penalties,
Mm,
I'd rather go for Zaha. But Eze could just come away with a goal because Leeds are not great.
yeah,
So with Guehi is one of the best defenses to go for, cheap defenders to go for. He can be your first sub, and you could even
yeah,
start him against Leeds, and then Justin looked good against Forest, but anyone can look good against Forest. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? So
It's true. It's true.
from this list, I'll just have Guehi. I'll just
Yeah,
have Guehi from this because when you look at to be fair, if you can afford Justin, maybe go for it as your last defender because Nico Williams is not a great defender. So I would say Guehi. Yeah, Guehi for me from this list.
brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. And I think I definitely agree with my friends IBK there in that Guay for 4.3 million. And with the fixtures that Palace have and the fact that Guay is nailed, you can do a lot worse, mate. And Gary says, "Thank you very much. He's loving the tips." And I think that wraps it up for us all today. I just want to first of all say a big thank you to IBK for coming and joining us. Much appreciated having you on. And so, if you are listening in the chat, do go into YouTube and search for the FPL Sandwich podcast. I watch that podcast personally. Those guys are hilarious, and also the ball knowledge as well is absolutely top tier. So go give official_IBK a follow on Twitter, and go and give the FPL Sandwich podcast a subscription on YouTube. That would really help them out over there. That would be really great. If you haven't already, do give our podcast that we've just done here today a like, and do drop us a subscription too. And thank you everyone for tuning in today. And we will catch you next time on the FPL Addicts review.